the regularly scheduled Tabor Town Council meeting for March 14th, 2022. I will call the meeting to order, and just for clarification purpose, to advise we do have Councillor Sorensen virtually online with us today as well. So regarding the agenda, I've had a administration request actually to add item 7.7, which is Municipal Election 2021 Campaign Contribution Disclosure Requirement. So if I could ask for an adoption of the agenda as amended, please. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the adoption of the agenda as amended to include Municipal Election 2021 Campaign Contribution Disclosure.
Thank you. Amended motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to the adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of the Council, February 28, 2022. Mr. Thibault.
Just before Council, the regular minutes from February 28th, 2022 for your consideration.
Right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that Council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held on February 28th, 2022 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. There is no business arising. Bylaws. Item 6.1, Land Use Bylaw Amendments. First reading. Mr. Thibault.
I believe we've got Ms. Katie Schlamp who's going to come up and present for us.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council.
Good afternoon.
Land Use Bylaw 13-2020 was adopted by Council in November of 2020. The Land Use Bylaw is considered a living document. That means it requires regular updates to fix clerical errors or changes in legislation or address new areas that are required as the community grows. As such, we've proposed Bylaw 2-2022 to amend the Land Use Bylaw. The proposed amendment addresses clerical errors and gaps not previously addressed in the Land Use Bylaw. In April 2021, Council adopted Bylaw 8-2021 to amend Land Use Bylaw 13-2020 by redistricting the Meadows property from Urban Reserve to Direct Control 4, or DC4, and provide for development standards for the DC4 district. When this was done, amending Bylaw 8-2021, our new Bylaw 2-2022 will amend Bylaw 8-2021 to remove Section 3.1, which is the development standards for DC4, while remaining intact will be the redistricting from Urban Reserve to DC4. So the bylaw would not be fully repealed as was stated in the request for decision. This is being requested as what was adopted in the Bylaw 8-2021 was incorrect development standards. It was not what was originally agreed upon between administration and the developer. The setbacks are more in line with typical residential and not manufactured homes, and it doesn't work for the development. So when we went to do a development permit, as you've seen earlier, we needed your permission to issue that permit because it didn't fit the requirements. So this will make that update so that we no longer need to bring every application to you as long as they fit within those requirements. Along with the updates to the DC4, Bylaw 2-2022 proposes some fixing clerical errors that we have identified over the past year and a half of using this bylaw. Such as references to the wrong section of the bylaw and incorrect wording that makes things a little less clear in some areas. These errors have been identified in the proposed bylaw by a comment, so you're aware of which ones were clerical errors. Additionally, we have proposed changes that will make the land use bylaw more clear for readers, such as clarifying the maximum floor area for accessory structures and adding and updating parking requirements. We have also proposed increasing the maximum driveway width to reduce the number of applications going to the Municipal Planning Commission for waivers, allowing shipping containers on a temporary basis in residential areas for moving or renovations, and clarifying rules around the usage of portable signs for community events. One update to the regulations surrounding election signs has also been proposed for consideration in an effort to reduce the number of signs in one location and therefore reduce distractions to driving. Administration has proposed limiting signs to one sign per candidate every 15 meters. All other rules around signs would remain the same. The solar energy collector system use has been added to most of the land use districts to allow administration to issue development permits for solar panels. This would ensure that applicants are obtaining building permits for the installation of solar panels, and it would allow us to keep a record of which properties have solar panels, which would be shared with the fire department so that they're aware when they're attending calls if they're dealing with an electrical fire. Administration has also proposed the addition of 2 use definitions. The first is apiaries to allow beekeeping in the institutional and recreational district. Earlier this year, you updated the exotic and wild animal bylaw to allow a local school to partake in apiculture, and this will provide regulations around doing so. We've also added slab on grade house. This would allow a home of a similar size and finish to the neighborhood to be built with no basement, and we've added that use into the DC4 district, which would allow someone to build a stick home in the DC4 district, or the Meadows, as so long as it fit with the neighborhood. This was requested by a local resident who's looking to build accessible homes in the Meadows. And we did consult with the developer and he was okay with this as well. To address concerns of the developer, we did change the parking requirements in the DC4 district so that recreational vehicles would not be required to be parked on a paved surface, but still a hard surface such as gravel if it is on common property. Their bylaws currently do not allow recreational vehicles such as trailers to be parked on individual lots next to the home. So the only way it would be allowed is if it's on condo property. In their outline plan, they have not made plans for recreational vehicle parking. However, should that change in the future, they didn't want to be committed to having to pave that whole area, as it would be expensive to maintain that. Lastly, administration has updated the use definition of childcare and childcare limited to remove the clause that states overnight care is not permitted. This would bring us in line with legislation and meet the request of a local business who would like to provide overnight care. Administration would be happy to answer any questions about the land use bylaw or proposed amendments. If we receive first reading today, we will proceed with holding a public hearing at the March 28th council meeting and then potentially moving to second and third reading. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Katie. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your report. It's quite a number of changes, I think, all for the better. But number 6, regarding temporary container placements for contractors. How temporary is temporary, please?
It would be up to 6 months. We wouldn't require them to get a permit, but if we received a complaint, they would need to prove what date that the container was placed there. It's already happening, so we felt by adding this in, then we can at least have an enforcement way to ensure it's not happening for more than 6 months, but still giving people that ability to, move things out of their house to make changes or pack something up and then move to another home. We wanted to, provide flexibility, but also ensure it's not a permanent fixture.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rudd.
Yeah, I was glad to see number 11, adding the slab on grade house usage. Just for clarification on the parking requirements for recreational vehicles, this is done in anticipation of a future development where people can put this is not on each common lot.
That's correct. Their condo bylaws do not allow you to park a recreational vehicle on your own personal lot. In their outline plan, which guides the development for the entire area, which is 302 lots, there is not currently a place for recreational vehicles, but they could apply to amend that outline plan and put in an area if they chose to change the design of the neighborhood. And in that case, the way the bylaw states now, it would have to be paved.
Right. So, But if they're not allowed, then why does it say they have to be paved? If you're not allowed to park one on your, or
I believe there were discussions in the beginning of the outline process about having a place for recreational vehicles, but ultimately it was not included in the design.
Okay, I can see it happening. So.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
thanks for
since-
that.
yeah.
That's good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Counselor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also had concerns about item number 6 with the sea cans. I think we're opening up a can of worm allowing sea can containers to be in residential areas. And it doesn't specify if it's in the driveway or backyard. That one concerns me. I think it's always been our rule not to allow sea cans in residential areas, because 6 months is a long time to be looking at a sea can. So that one I would like to see actually not even in our bylaws. We don't allow them in residential areas at all.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Just a clarification question on that for Mr. Tebow, or economic development, it's fine. Is that not set up for, to be able to build, correct? So, and/or the security of whatever materials may be left on site?
Yeah, I can feel that. So we did go through this in another location. We did allow it and end up putting it in a bylaw just so that we can actually regulate the time frame. But yes, it's for some type of a renovation. If you're redoing a kitchen or you just bought a home and you need to get things out to do the reno or get things back in, that's really what they're designed for. Something to do with something like that.
As I'm just thinking, like right now, there is another work trailer out there, right? With there has been for some time, since they've been doing the infrastructure and landscaping, et cetera. So that's not a sea can, but it is a trailer, and then there's whatever surrounding area they're making use of also.
So this wouldn't be specific to the Meadows. This is
Oh, I
this
see.
is
Okay.
across the town, right?
Okay.
There is something I know what you're making reference to, but
Right,
this would
yeah.
be for the entire town.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Councilor Bruin.
I think I could perhaps see the need for a sea can at a commercial site where there's lots of tools in that stored, but I don't recall ever seeing a sea can put in a lot where they're building a home. I just, like, moving a sea can in isn't just hooking up to it and moving it in. It's either hoisted in or it's slid off a trailer. So I don't think it's practical myself.
Your worship, through to Mr. Bruin, the intention would be it wouldn't be for the development stage of a new home. It would be if you're remodeling a home or you're moving homes. There are, I can't think of any business names at the moment, but there are businesses where rather than getting a moving truck, you can get a sea can, they drop it off, you fill it up, and then they deliver it to your new home, or perhaps they store it for a little bit if there's a bit of a gap in time between moving. So this would just ensure that someone is not ordering that sea can, having it sit in their yard for 6 months, and then leaving, or longer than 6 months, and then finally moving it. But also would allow them to use that service while being within the rules of the land use bylaw.
All right, thank you, Councilor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, regarding the shipping containers, in my view, I'm not opposed to them per se. I am somewhat concerned about the length of time. That's why I asked the question. I think the 6-month period is too long, in my view. But I think, Mr. Mayor, we can leave it as is through the first reading and then see what the feedback is from the public hearing results, and then debate it from there. But I'm not opposed to, but I'm concerned about the length of time in particular. And in conjunction with that, Mr. Mayor, if I may, would you be able to explain to some of the newer council members what direct control really means, please?
So a direct control district means it's under the authority of council. So in most areas of town, if it's a permitted use, the development authority, so our office, can issue the permit. If it's a discretionary use, it goes to the Municipal Planning Commission for their approval. If it's direct control, then it is up to council, and the Municipal Planning Commission and the development officer have no say.
All right, thank you. Councilor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Beckering covered a lot what I was concerned with, this length of time. I don't want to see neighbors bringing in sea cans and doing their bathroom renovations for the next 3 years or something, because There's not usually a timeline put on renovations, I don't believe. So I think if we do allow that, there's got to be some really tight standards. And when it has to be permitted to the day it shows up to the day it's leaving.
So do we actually, sorry, Councilor Brown.
Not just that someone complains about it. I think there should be a strict rule saying from this date to that date.
Do we have a requirement now in any residential location?
Currently, they're not permitted at all. And
Not at
so
all.
we felt by adding
Yeah.
in on a temporary basis, it would give that flexibility that you could use it in these situations, but not on that permanent basis as
I
was
see,
the
okay,
intention.
thank you. All right, Councilor Sorensen, did you have any questions at all?
I do, and I reiterate my, also council's concerns about having these shipping containers in residential areas, and 6 months does seem to be an extended period of time. And then my other thing would be portable signs for community events. Is it normally required to have a development permit, or is this something new?
It has always been required that you have a development permit for a portable sign. For community events, we do not charge a fee. However, it does need to come down after the event. The way the bylaw was written, it was a little bit gray, and we were seeing a little pushback on how long a group could use that sign for. So we've clarified that too. The sign does need to come down after the event.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
That's-
thank you. So just, any other questions arising? I think maybe just some of the general consensus was some of the concern about item number 6 and some tweaking is required or asked. Is that the basic gist, correct? All right, Councilor Becker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right,
I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 2-2022 to amend a land use bylaw 13-2020.
all right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
Carried unanimously. Thank you, Keating.
Thank you.
All right, item 6.2, investment incentive bylaw 1-2022, second and third reading. Mr. Tebow.
We've got Amy already queued up to give us the run through of what's going on.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. In the last council meeting, a resolution was made to pass the first reading of the investment incentive bylaw. This bylaw offers a municipal tax incentive to new or existing and expanding local businesses on a tiered scale over 5 years. This bylaw will help us to compete with other local municipalities, offer an incentive to help local businesses grow and draw in new investment. As asked by Councillor Sorensen at the last meeting, there are a number of criteria that apply to applicants, such as they must have an ownership interest in the property must be non-residential and located within the limits of the town, the applicants must have no outstanding monies owed to the town, and should their account fall into arrears during the period, their agreement will be voided. The application must be received before the issuance of a building permit, and all required permits must be in place, as well full compliance with other bylaws, plans, agreements, codes, and acts must be met, such as safety codes, building, and fire codes. For expanding businesses, the applicant must make a capital investment to expand, improve, or renovate the non-residential property, resulting in an increased assessment value of at least 25% by the end of year 2 when the development permit was issued. This allows all businesses, big or small, to be eligible to apply. And the tax incentive for expanding businesses applies only to the increased portion of their taxes. Administration is presenting this bylaw for discussion and possible second and third readings.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councilor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy that we're looking at this. My only question is with the 100% exemption in the first 2 years. Is that a little too much? Like, should we, maybe 75% on the second year? Because 2 years is quite it's just up for discussion. I'm not sure if we made the right decision with that big of a tax exemption.
It is comparable with what other municipalities in the area are offering.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councilor McLean.
Sorry, I just have a question. Is this also for doing updates to your business as well?
Yes, as long as it increases the assessment value by at least 25%.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Sorensen, yes.
I'd like to thank you very much for the detailed explanation of the proposal, and I'd be ready to make a I'm having a
motion.
A motion, thank you.
All righty, go right ahead.
That council gives second reading to bylaw 1-2022 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Someone prepared to make the second motion. Counselor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that council gives third reading to bylaw 1-2022 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on to item 7, action items. Item 7.1, 2022 volunteer recognition. Mr. Tebow.
We're going to ask Megan to come forward and give us an explanation.
Thank you. Ms. Brennan.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
Administration is asking for Council's permission to allocate the budgeted funds for the 2022 Volunteer Recognition Banquet as they have done the past 2 years. For the benefit of those new members of Council, with the COVID-19 restrictions disallowing events to be held, Administration came up with the idea to take these funds and allocate them to the volunteer groups at $100 per citizen member. Those groups were then able to use the money as they saw fit, whether that was for an item for their members, donating to a charity or group, or using it for a service. Of course, our amazing volunteers have responded incredibly positively to this initiative the past 2 years. With the COVID-19 restrictions lifting in early March and with very little forewarning from the province, it doesn't give administration enough time to plan an event in line with what we've done in the past and what our volunteers deserve. Therefore, administration is asking for one more time to follow in the steps of the past 2 years and take the budgeted funds and allocate it per member to the group as they see fit. As you can see in your agenda item, the volunteers in true altruistic form gave back to the community, which was incredibly gratifying to see. And the groups wanted to note to council that they felt both recognized and honored to be given what they were the past 2 years when they couldn't have an event. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councilor Rudd.
Just, so you say budget allocated, so they're even, whether you do the banquet or whether you do the awards, they're the same.
Basically, there's $10,000 budgeted, approved by council, and the past years we've spent $7,900 and $7,800, so within the budget.
That's a great deal. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councilor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council directs administration to cancel the 2022 Volunteer Recognition Banquet with regret, and that Council allocates the budgeted funding for the 2022 Volunteer Recognition Banquet to the volunteer groups at $100 per member to be used as the group sees fit.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Councilor Rudd, do you have a question also? All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to, excuse me, item 7.2, East Side Constructed Wetlands Project. Mr. Tebow.
Mr. Tebow is going to speak to this one. Mr. Scheer wasn't able to make it today with some personal matters. So I will go over best I can. I also have a RAM in here. If there was any technical questions to come around, I wouldn't know that stuff. So I'll speak to, this is the Wetlands Project. The funding that was originally provided was this 7.499200, so 7.5 million basically, and they came from all these different funding sources. This is about a 90% funded project for the council members that weren't here previously. These are the funding sources that they've come from. So we went through the procurement process. It was awarded to DeGraff Excavating. And if I slide down here, we have the 3 proponents that bid, DeGraff being the lowest compliant bidder. And MP has also provided their letter of recommendation suggesting the same thing. I did want to point out down here at the bottom that there is a statement at the bottom that suggested amount of project unfunded. And as was mentioned in the sentence below, administration believes that they're going to be able to make up these costs inside the available contingency, and we're not asking for any more money for the project. So it is landing on what was originally approved by council. And that's about all that I have. So if there were technical questions or any questions, we'll field what we can.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Rudd?
Yeah, just on that last point you raised, of course, that your attention was drawn to that by saying that we have a budget and we're going to manipulate that budget. So the question is, do we know that for sure? How do we know that? Are we predicting that? And does maybe the contractor know that that's what we're going to be trying to do? Or, I mean, you've used the words no more money.
Correct. So we do have a contingency already built into this, which has $575,000. And the plan is this would fall into that contingency amount.
Yeah, I guess it would with those numbers. Okay, thanks.
All right, any other questions arising? Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, of course, a huge project. I think it's beneficial for the town. It's certainly beneficial for the Tabor Irrigation District because they'll clear the water up that we dump into their lake. I think it's high time we proceed with this project, but I'm concerned about the timeline. Can you give some clarification on that, Mr. Tebow?
I can't speak to the timeline. I'm not sure if Raman can speak to original timeline versus the timeline you're seeing.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
The timeline on this is 2 years. And again, it's, as you said, it's a huge project. And the first year mainly it's preparing those ponds. And then second year is planting those plants in there. So that's the timeline that it was given by 2 years. Yes.
All right, thank you. Councillor Brew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a very exciting project. The TID is very excited, the MD as well. This is going to, remember back to our wet spring 2 years ago, there was nowhere for that water to go. And this is allowing us to dump water directly to the river. So this is quite important. And with that, I'd like to make the motion that council awards Eastside Constructed Wetlands Project to the Graph Excavating Limited for the amount of $6,476,954.40, inclusive of GST, with funds to come from the approved capital budget.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7.3, follow-up to Tabor District Housing Foundation request for financial assistance. Mr. Tebow.
So this project, as most of you are aware, has been around for a little bit as far as discussion purposes. We did also have a joint meeting with the MD, which reiterated the idea that we'd like to have a discussion around the financials and the viability of this project. So it's here for council's discussion, and I believe Mr. Jansen is here. If there were any questions that needed to go that way, that's probably the best person to ask.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was concerned the last meeting or a meeting or so ago about the town's financial position regarding our debt limit and ability to service our debts. And I'm liking what I see here, but I'd like to ask Mr. Orr, if possible, to give just a brief overview of our position, please.
Good afternoon, His Worship and members of council.
Good afternoon.
So to give you briefings on the debt level of the town, as of 31st of December 2020, that is from the audited financial statements, we are sitting with about 9.3 million in debt. Now, on top of that, we've added a few in 2021. So we added about 4.6 million debentures again, that's for the meadows. And then we added about 1 million for the chambers. And then just about a month ago, or a few weeks ago, we did add 1.4 million. That is for the solar generation. So in total, for the projection, we should be sitting with about over 16 million in debt. So the only thing that probably I could talk about there is just the servicing limit, because that's the key that we need to watch from the financial standpoint. Because for the debt limit is normally calculated 1.5 times the revenue which we have for the town. So if you look at the audited financial statements in 2020, we are sitting at about 37 million. So you might think we have a lot that we can borrow. But what the key there is the debt servicing limit. And the debt servicing limit is calculated by, calculating 0.25 times the revenue. So if you look at our audited financial statements, the debt servicing limit is about 6 million. And as we keep on servicing the debt, it reduces. So I believe those are some of the things that council needs to consider as they proceed with the benches.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roy. Any other questions arising?
I guess I do, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Sorensen, yes.
I was just wondering in regards to, because I'm new to this council, the funding sources, where the gentleman gets his estimates from. And I believe like the town of Tabor land, that isn't accurate as to the value that we purchased. So I'm just wondering where he gets the numbers from.
All right, thank you. Mr. Jensen, do you have some information on that?
Thank you, Council, for having me present here. I think we calculated the land base. Indeed, the land was purchased for around $550,000, but that was for a complete parcel of land. We were asked to design the building that would give up a portion of that land that we would not need. So we allocated it proportionally to determine the value of the land. And the value or cost of the buildings are developed from what's called a Class D costing, which is based on schematic design. So numbers of rooms, square feet of hallways, roof space, all done by BTY costing. It is a plus or minus probably 20%, maybe even 25% value, because we would be spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars more to actually have designed the actual building to tell you exactly what it costs. But for CMHC and for the government of Alberta, a Class D costing is sufficient. That's what they're used to receiving. And so that's where the values of the costs of the buildings for the high efficiency option or the net zero option are given.
All right, thank you. Councilor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, don't leave yet. I was wondering if you had any potential businesses that are interested in your lease space and why you're trying to add that as part of your building.
Generally, in these types of designs, they see commercial space as a valuable anchor, and it tends to lease at a higher rate. So particularly in urban settings, you will see that's how they pay for the building because that commercial space is so valuable. Not as much in Tabor. It could be that we, as an organization, Tabor and District Housing, could site our office with the building. There'd be some operational benefits to doing that. And then we're essentially, our rent is paying for our loan. But there also is not necessarily great small leasable spaces in town as well. So it's a high traffic area. You have 32 units of residential as a part of it. I think it was seen as a way of spreading out and trying to generate additional revenue for that space. because the rents on the units do not generate a lot of rent. That's, yeah. To make them that affordable, it becomes very difficult to cash flow the property.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Jens, just to follow up a little bit more on the funding model, just not clear about, you got two different sources there. For one, the CMHC forgivable loan and the Government of Alberta contribution.
Yes.
Are those guaranteed anywhere with those figures there?
No, that's actually your decision is the next step in applying for those items. So your decision could be moot if CMHC says, no, not a viable project, we're not going to fund it, or the provincial government decides, nope, we're not going to fund it. Of course, the net zero option gets even more complicated because FCM is involved, so there's more funders. The reality is that in order to apply, we need to have these sorts of supports or information provided to them as part of the application. The traditional route would have been to go ask for an equity contribution from a municipality and then ask for financing from CMHC. Our approach was we felt that we could handle some amount of monies in a debenture and ask for a forgivable loan from CMHC. That way, indeed, debt servicing levels and limits are used through debenture financing, but there's not an ask for a direct contribution of equity from the municipalities.
Okay, so you're looking at like a piecemeal kind of a funding model to start with one and hopefully build on that and get
I
something
think we
further.
just switched around who provided what.
Yeah.
But it still is a puzzle that a whole bunch of people have to agree to. But I guess may as well get some of the harder decisions out of the way first. If locally there is a concern, then let's deal with that before we spend the next 6 months to 12 months working through the application process with CMHC.
Okay, and I know the MD of Tabor has some interest in this also, so it's, see, they're not in the actual funding model there though, right?
They on their set of slides, they are.
Oh, okay.
Indeed, because we don't know
Yes.
which, right, that was the concern. I think there's other asks that are at different spots. They can't help us with property taxes because the building's not in their jurisdiction. But I think I guess as a board and as an administration, we looked at, I've been encouraged continually to make the project something that both municipalities could collaborate together to deliver for the residents. CMHC really doesn't care the borders of or boundaries of the MD or the town. They see it as the equivalent of 4 square blocks in Toronto. So what they want to see is that the groups are working together, that the groups want it to happen, and what are the groups putting in to make it happen. And I think we actually have a very attractive proposal, but of course it does require help from all the players.
I guess I'm just not understanding why then the MD wouldn't be in this particular model if you're looking at a collaboration potential project.
Yeah, I think they could. And so the reason why we said debenture required, we don't know which party necessarily has the means or the willingness to underwrite the debenture. I'll be the judge if you two want to, Arliss and Darren want to arm wrestle over it. But ultimately, it's a decision of councils and what works for each jurisdiction.
Right. All right. Thank you. Councillor Becker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Jansen. As of today, the MD has not made a commitment regarding help of any kind, whether it's debenture or not, have they?
Well, because they haven't met. I think we're meeting next Tuesday for that meeting. But I also think, I'm not out of school saying that they are also not interested in stealing anyone's thunder. If there is a desire that this is a Town of Tabor project, they are not going to interject. I think they are, now I'll speak for them. I think they want to help. I think they want to participate, but ultimately their council will say that next Tuesday or not. I guess I have to say I hope that people want to be a part of it.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Broom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the debenture required, whether it's option 1 or 2, we're hoping the MD will contribute somewhat to that.
Yeah, I think, I don't understand the logistics of it completely. I think it makes more sense that one or the other, because if both parties did half the debenture, it's twice the paperwork, isn't it? Or maybe Mr. Orwa knows that. Like, it can be set up that way. That's the amount of money that's required. Which party it comes from, I guess I'd assumed one party would do it, not necessarily half for both, but you could.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rudd.
Just to follow up with that.
Just hang on 1 sec, Jack. We'll get to you. Councillor Rudd.
Amount of paperwork to do double the amount.
It's me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. In the documentation that we have before us, Mr. Jansen, the work the administration has done in doing some background on it, they're posing some questions, one of which was the debt limit, which we just discussed here. The other areas of concern would, and they're pretty basic, who's going to be making the payment? If the foundation is responsible for making payment, what happens if they default? And if loan payments are defaulted, will the town be responsible for taking the loan? I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
Indeed. The requirement of CMHC and the Government of Alberta is that the proposal be self-sustaining. So there are requirements built into the business case that they would see the ratios that they want to see to show that it's sustaining. That said, with any venture, cases on paper versus in reality can be different. What I can say is we are required to put in an amount for administration. We're required to put an amount in for 2 or 3 different areas that we actually do not expect to incur, or we would not have to incur as an organization. We believe the size of our organization, the staff we have in place, and this would be about a 15% bump in the number of units that we manage. We actually don't plan on adding any staff to manage this. We believe we can handle this within our current infrastructure. So operationally, there are some costs that we can absorb that are on paper for the business case, but we don't necessarily have to incur. That would be one of the major sensitivities. In terms of, we do not have a means of making up a deficit in this type of building currently. You can't requisition on this type of building currently. There's some discussion that the government may allow that, but I don't know that that's serious discussion at this point. In a case of complete default, I think it could potentially fall to the underwriter because it essentially is a guarantor of the property. That said, I think you're looking at about 20% or less of the value of the total building. And it would also still meet the objectives of what the town is trying to do with affordable housing. It's not just Tabor and District Housing wants to do this. I think this is in alignment with what the town is doing in other developments. It is a very specific type of housing, but it still fits into the overall plan. So having been through some corporate issues before, personally, one doesn't like to talk about that a whole lot, but that risk exists. It does. Anytime you borrow money. I do believe you would have an asset that easily could be sold for more than the debt amount if the community said, well, we don't run this kind of stuff. We don't do this kind of stuff. But so the value would be there, but the other part would be the effect of this investment and the type of housing that it can provide to the citizens of Tabor. Looking at it anecdotally and in the business case, this is a case of if you build it, they will come. They're already here. We just don't know where they're all living currently.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very concerned about this proposed project in regards to the MD participation. I'm concerned about our debt servicing limit. I think we're broaching into the dangerous area of too much debt taking on. And we haven't even talked about the inflationary aspect of a project such as this. I would forecast to you, sir, that it's going to be an increase of 10-15%.
And actually, that is embedded in the cost estimate. But you're right, that's about the right number.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you. Mr. Mayor, by that I'm saying that I cannot support at the present time
All right.
any request for approval for the debenture.
All right, thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, the debt servicing limit concerns me, but on a scale of need and want, I think this definitely leans more towards the need. You have people now that you could place, I imagine, in these apartments if they're available today. With the commercial rental in the bottom, I think that's a must. Just use a name, for example, a Subway there that residents would access, and it's a convenient location, something like that. But I do understand Mr. Beckering's concerns because we do have to be careful with our limits. But if there's any way you could swing this, I think it is a definite need for the town of Tabor.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rudd.
Yeah, in terms of needs and wants, just for clarification, this whole project arose out of a community consultation, did it not, a couple of years ago, in determining what the future housing needs would be for the community of Tabor?
Right. So we did a community needs assessment, and we did focus on a fairly specific demographic, partly because in our current portfolio of social housing, we cannot house a single individual from the age kind of 60 down to 18. We have no one-bedroom apartments. So we turn away lots of people on a regular basis because we just simply, we have two bedrooms, and then for the most part, our one-bedroom apartments are in the seniors' manors, which is great. But that specific demographic, and so when we focused on that, we did have a fairly large range of identified between 30 to 120 people of single individuals that would be paying more than core housing need, or they were in core housing need, which would mean they would pay more than 30% of their income towards housing. And that drove somewhat the size. So we have, I believe, 18 affordable units that are bachelor and one bedroom. And we have another 14 units that are one bedroom and two bedroom that are near market. But even that near market is 80% of current market. So there's a significant discount even on the near market units. Trying to find a way to house people that are underemployed, working at minimum wage, maybe not getting full-time hours, but still making sure that they stay out of core housing needs. So they're paying less than 30% of their income to rent.
All right, any other questions?
Comment.
Councillor Sorensen.
I just think that I'm caught on this universal design concept, specifically if it's for low-income housing. I was a part of the chamber building, and part of that is we had to really take a look and really lower the cost due to COVID and the increase in lumber. And I was just wondering if you've taken a look and really reflected at your costs and maybe seen if you could scale back on this proposal to make it more affordable for the project to move forward.
All right. Anything to add, Mr. Johnson?
Indeed, that would be part of the process. We can actually make this pencil at its current values, but we do need the assistance to find all the pieces of the puzzle. Indeed, our expectation would be that in the design phase and finalization of construction documents, we would do cost design decisions. Our expectation is to come in significantly lower than this, but I can't prove it at this point. Because one, as Councillor Beckering pointed out, the inflation of it could very well drive the prices up. But also, you know, you can't go much smaller than 350 square feet for a studio. And indeed, there are significant requirements around universal design that enable, that those are a lot of the drivers to the funding decisions. You must meet their building requirements. So indeed, I would love to build it cheaper. My hope is to build it cheaper, but this is what the cost consultants say at this date we could build it for.
All right, thank you, Councillor McLean.
One of the points, it says that the project will be self-sustaining and will not require operation or capital funds to operate in the long term. How long do you propose that will be, that it will be then self-sustaining? How long will it take to get
Actually,
to that point?
in perpetuity. That's their definition. The government of Alberta will not put in another nickel. CMHC there's not going to be another national housing strategy where they kick in more money. So we've run the loans for 30 years, but really we've designed this that it's one in, get it built, and then it has to survive on its own. And we believe we've shown that it can.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or writing? Councillor Rudd.
Just comment, I see that it would fit in with, debt expansion, which nobody really wants to see too much of. But there's some risks associated with it, and this, not understanding what the MD is going to do. I mean, it's not much of a partnership when we're working in these silos separate from each other, so it gives great concern. Because if there's going to be cooperation, then we're only looking at half of what's proposed, and that makes it much more palatable to be able to make a decision on it. So I know we've got a short timeline on it. You want to get things moving on it, but I'm just really uncomfortable not knowing whether we're all in or there's two of us in the boat.
Thank you, Councillor Rudd. I think I would agree with that 100%. Also, with you mentioned collaboration. I mean, there doesn't seem to be collaboration even in the funding model right now. So I mean, it's with what Councillor Rudd is alluding to is pretty important as far as that goes. And, the old story is collaboration has been a buzzword for the last several years to do collaboration projects as much as possible. And by doing collaboration projects, you generally get the different grants that are available out there because of that. If you're on your own, that's a whole different ballgame. But collaboratively, you have way more clout in that regard. Absolutely.
I would suggest that next Tuesday, I will hear much of the same thing. That they will say, well, what does the town of Tabor want to do? And if they're not have to commit to something, well, why should we commit to something? It's not even in our own jurisdiction. So I get where you're coming from, but I guess I would also say that my hope is to put forward an application. But I think it is entirely possible. The last time I was here was 5 months ago, and I was told, you guys take an awful long time to turn this around, this project. And the reality is, this is the first time that we were able to come back. And I thank you for being able to come back. But indeed, there are two parties involved. We are an organization that, sadly, we have very little means. We have lots of expertise. We can do this. But I think, indeed, it would be wonderful. One group is going to have to take the step of faith. And the other group, I believe, will come along. I guess I'm the eternal optimist. But I do sense that if you feel you can't make a decision because you don't know what they're going to do, they're going to say exactly the same thing.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for council's consideration, what if we were to say we'll match what the MD matches? We'll do $1.2 million, they do $1.2 million. Would council entertain something such as that?
Well, that's a good question, Councillor Brown. You know what? I think all things considered, it's maybe more advisable to put back in our administration's court. And work with Mr. Jansen and or the MD at Tabor to look at that, because we have met jointly. You know what, the sense I got that there was interest at both levels. So to me, we're kind of going around and not coming to any solid conclusion here. So without that, I think we're missing something here, actually. So to me, if it is back to our administration with some form of motion to include the MD with that as well, I think that would make things a whole lot more palatable all the way around going forward. Mr. Thibault.
Understanding where Mr. Jansen is coming from, I might suggest that if there's a motion made to come back to administration for or against, that there's something that is contingent on something. So yes, there's a quasi-commitment made, assuming that there's something that comes from somewhere else, contingent on the MD supporting something or supplying something. And it might even be best to talk about a percentage as opposed to a dollar figure, but administration will take away anything that's brought our direction. But I know we've done motions historically that are contingent on something else happening before we commit.
Yeah, you know, I think we've had at least a couple of meetings in the last year jointly with the MD with this particular project potential. So I mean, like I said, the interest has been there, but it's now that it seems like there's backpedaling going on. Nothing, no solid commitment there. So to me, either we're going to collaborate or we're not. You know, it's not a one or the other. Well, it is one or the other, I should say. But it's we're not solid with anything that way right now. And collaboration is really key if this can potentially work. Right. So to me, that's, like I said, it's very proper to put back in administration's hands to deal with Mr. Jansen further and or the MD at Tabor for that possibility. Councilor Bruin?
Well, that's basically what I was alerting to, like, let's make an offer out there if they're willing to split, something to get the ball rolling, because we will just go back and forth until someone makes a decision. So something like that, if administration can pen something for that or similar to some sort of cost share on this debenture.
You prepared to make a motion to have administration involved with Mr. Jansen and or the MD at Tabor? Councilor Bruin?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we direct administration to work together with the MD on a suitable cost-sharing solution for this affordable apartment funding.
All right, and just as a friendly amendment to add Mr. Jansen in the mix as far as part of the project
Yes, I'm sorry, and
oversight?
Mr. Johnson as well.
All right, that got all the bases covered, Mr. Thibault?
And it's just with respect to a debenture, correct?
Councilor Bruin, that's what you're...
That's what I'm referring to, yes.
All right. All right, we do have a friendly amended motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councilor Beckman?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Before we vote, could you have the motion read back? Because I think now I'm hearing something else.
All right, fair enough.
Is it a cooperation of some sort, or is it a debenture corporation? What is it, please?
Mr. Mayor, through to council, the motion by Councilor Bruin was that council directs administration to work together with the MD and Mr. Jansen on a suitable cost-sharing solution for this affordable apartment funding with respect to a debenture.
All right. All right, thank you. We do have a friendly amended motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councilor Sorensen?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Carried unanimously, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, on to item 7.4, say County Kenya invitation. Mr. Thibault?
So this has been before council previously. The only content I would add is there was a discussion with Tango, so Tabor Assisting Nations through Global Outreach, which is Dr. Torrey that we've been discussing, and he has expressed an interest to also attend. There wasn't a cost associated to the town, but they typically would go to countries like this, and they'd have a scoping exercise where they provide all their different services. So it could be construction, it could be medical, it could be dental. So I just wanted to point out that he has expressed an interest to go along with a group if in fact there was a group that was going to go. Outside of that, I'll leave it with you, Mr. Mayor. I believe there were some additional costs that maybe you had explored.
Yes, I did. I did look into that as requested, and I believe it's roughly a $500 bill for the required shots involved. I believe 3 different levels involved with that to safeguard, as well as roughly $100 for insurance for the time period to be there. So about a $600 add-on to what's not on paper right at the moment. All right, any further questions? Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a really exciting chance, maybe. We haven't really asked if you really want to go, if you're able to go, if you think we'll be able to run the town without you, Don. I'd really almost suggest Mr. Orwa attend as well, but we need someone subject to, that's an expert on some of the concerns they have as well. But I think it'd be key Mr. Orwa attended if he was willing. But who do we have? Who else would we recommend or would be willing to go?
Well, I think as far as Mr. Orwa was actually from that location, so obviously he's a key individual to be part of this with the different connection he's got there. That's what started off the whole, say, a county relationship to begin with, right? So I would certainly agree with that part. But yes, I'd absolutely be willing to go if there's a desire of council to follow through with that. It's quite an invite. And with what they're looking for and what we dealt with the memorandum of understanding back in 2018 related to the irrigation component for potable water possibilities and/or irrigation from a lake that's within a mile or less from the particular villages involved, taking in roughly 100,000 population, I believe, in that particular area. So that's their ask, that's their invite. And I have irrigation background, certainly not expertise, I wouldn't suggest, but I do have irrigation background. And Mr. O has been very good following up with getting some details from, say, a county as far as elevation and or distances to have the water service, fresh water from the particular lake involved. So been a bit of legwork done that way as well, and I think they're also interested in garbage truck. We had interested in twinning, of course, was their original ask back in 2018 as well. Councillor Rund?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was my question, was what happened to the garbage truck proposal? And as I recall, we thought we might be able to access one, but shipping was a big issue, and setup and prep was a big issue, and those are some of the problems that, as I recall. So I don't know if that's a dead end with that, or if maybe there could be I don't know, some community involvement in fundraising or for a project like that to get a truck there, or can you get a truck closer than what we are and help them to get it from a closer source?
Yeah, I think we also had Gullum looking into some grant possibilities for us. I'm not sure if anybody came up with anything there, Mr. Tebow, that you're aware of?
There's been nothing that's been brought my way at this point in time, and last I knew, we had left the anticipated costing with the governor of Saya, and we haven't heard back whether they were willing or able to cover that cost.
Initially, they were willing to pay the cost to get the particular truck in question there, but we haven't heard back with whatever the numbers were that were sent, whether or not they would agree to that or not. All right, thank you. Councilor McLean?
Yeah, I think that, especially when it comes to dealing with the water issue, that's a good thing to go and help with. But I just have concerns about the garbage truck because I don't know currently what they are doing with their garbage. A lot of countries that are struggling in that manner usually just throw their garbage into a bin and burn it, and they don't really have somewhere for the garbage to go. And so I'm just wondering what the current kind of, conditions are, how this garbage collection is actually going to work for them.
I'm not sure if Mr. Earl, would you be aware of that by chance, what they're currently doing now?
I don't have that information.
All right, fair enough. Thank you. Councillor Broom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think really the garbage truck is more of a nice gesture, but the actual logistics of doing it, traveling it, reassembling when it's there, I think there's probably more we could do than donating a gravel truck, like something like that towards the expense of this trip. I really don't think the garbage truck shipping one all the way to Kenya is really practical, and the cost of that. And,
Yeah, it may not be.
we'd be better to sell the garbage truck locally and put that towards the cost of the trip. Really, I don't think we'd benefit anyone by sending a garbage truck that we don't want anymore all the way halfway across the world.
I know we can't make use of it. Raman, would you have any information on the status of that current garbage truck right now and what kind of condition it's in, usability-wise? Okay. Mr. Thibault, are you familiar with that at all?
What I can tell you is it doesn't pass our current CVIP standards and is not drivable, which is why it has to be disassembled and brought. What sort of standards exist in Kenya, I couldn't say.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of what we should and should not do, I view this whole project and this whole process to be an exploratory mission. I think it would be proper, in my view, Mr. Mayor, that the mayor and Mr. Orwa go to Kenya, check it out, report back to us and see what are we going to do now, boys and girls. You know, let's not talk about garbage trucks and water because that's all a follow-up to many, many other things, right? So I'm not opposed to sending the mayor and Mr. Orwa to Kenya. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Broom.
I agree with Council Beckering there that it'd be an exploratory mission. They came here and saw what we have to offer. We can go back over there and see what they need and what we're able to help with because this is a big project. This is something probably even out of the scope of the town of Tabor with the irrigation project and such as that. We can tell them, oh yeah, put a pivot there, but we don't know the actual costs, logistics, anything about that really. We would need to get someone in the irrigation field for all that, like engineering. That's beyond us. But I really think I would support saying the mayor and Mr. Orwa if he was willing and able to go. And if we do go with this, I would definitely recommend you get all the shots. With the world situation as is now, I'm not sure I'd even want to fly over there. But,
yeah, certainly something could change in a big
And,
hurry if the worst ever happens.
Make sure we have good life insurance on you.
Yeah, right. Councillor Sorensen, do you have anything else to add? Your end?
I'd just be willing to make a motion, Mayor, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I'll just hold that just for 1 second. Councillor Beckering did have a question, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Prepared to make a motion, but I'll cede to Councilor Sorensen.
All right. Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you. I make a motion that council authorizes the mayor and a designated person who could be Mr. Orwa as a subject matter expert to travel to Siaya County, Kenya to discuss and further collaborate efforts, and thanks His Excellency the Governor for the kind invitation. Further, council authorizes a maximum amount of, are we saying $10,420 for the journey to be expensed from the 2022 operating revenue reserves?
Mr. Thibault.
That particular number is the currently known number. I would suggest if we're making a motion to go that maybe the upset limit is something a little higher than that.
All right, thank you. Councillor Brew?
I would just friendly amendment to make it a maximum of $12,000 Canadian.
Okay.
All right, thank you. You accept that friendly amendment, Councillor Sorensen?
Yes. Yes.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table, friendly amendment, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to item 7.5, live streaming and recording council meetings. Mr. Thibault.
So Al is going to come present on this. This has actually come about not because of the previous discussions we had around changing our live stream screen and all that sort of things. It just happened to be that this was also coming forward as a matter of housekeeping for policies. So timing was good because I believe Al has incorporated some of the things we did talk about.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Al.
Council. As Mr. Thibault said, yeah, it's up for renewal after 3 years review and reflecting the resolution 62/2022 from Mr. Pickering. We updated our policy to reflect that resolution and we attached it for council consideration. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor McLean?
I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
That council approves the live streaming and recording of council meetings, policy CS-IT-3 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to item 7.6, standing item. Council requests, Mr. Thibault.
Sadly, Mr. Thibault has to report that things are all still in progress and there has been no completion of any of the 4 items on the list at this time.
All right, thank you. This is also council's opportunity to add anything new that's on your mind. Councilor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was out at Ken McDonald Sports Field on the weekend for the Town of Tabor's Snow Pitch Tournament, which was very well run, if a little muddy. And I noticed that the campground is there, and I noticed the fire pits that were installed last year and how good they were looking. And I know that we had previously discussed installing picnic tables out there, and I couldn't remember if that was budgeted as a future capital project or not. And I was just wondering if administration could enlighten me.
All right, Mr. Thibault, you're maybe not up on that one.
No, this part of administration cannot enlighten you. But maybe Mr. Mayor can, or we can certainly take it away and have Recreation come back and enlighten us.
I'm just going from memory, Councilor, that we did have that in the plan to install. I just don't know if we have enough, or we got to buy some new ones, or what the situation was.
I believe we had a cost for both the fire pits and the picnic tables, and we decided to just go with the fire pits.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, but I would be interested in the cost because I do think that that would be a valuable amenity out there.
So there's 16 sites there, so did you want to fashion a motion to look into that for 16
I
tables?
can certainly do that.
Sure.
So I would move for council to direct administration to investigate the cost of installing picnic tables at the campsites at Ken McDonald Campground.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. Any other standing item requests?
I have something if no one else does.
Councilor Sorensen, you go ahead.
So our community and surrounding area is struggling with finding skilled and unskilled labor. And I'm familiar with the town of Clare's Home having an immigration 2-year kind of program to find and attract employees to the region. And I was wondering if I could propose a motion to ask the town administration into looking into this and see if we can, the town would be able to perhaps have a similar program.
All right, thank you. Did you have a motion in mind, Councilor Sorensen?
A motion that the town administration look into attraction of skilled and unskilled labor, similar to perhaps the town of Clare's Home immigration program.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Councilor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had a number of questions and, actually, I guess you call them concerns about our new speed zone put in front of the, I'm sorry, I'm at a loss, the Royal Hotel and the Ace Place staff. So I was trying to think. I've had a number of people come to me and ask why we did it, and I really have no good explanation for it. I don't really understand myself. There's no playgrounds there. I'm not sure that a bus unloads there or not. But I've had a lot of people think that the town has put a speed trap there. So I just want to bring that to council's attention, and perhaps we should readdress that speed zone we've put in there.
All right, I think I'm just going from memory on that one. I think that was to the traffic committee for consideration and recommendation back to council to do so because it was an Ace Place staff request, I do believe. Does that sound familiar? Councillor Firth?
Yeah, that does sound familiar. It was before my time on the traffic committee, but I believe it was, a combination of parents of Ace Place students or staff at Ace Place. And it is, it's a school zone, and Ace Place is a school. And I think there was concern about kids crossing or students crossing there and coming out between vehicles, and the thought was that if we slowed traffic down, it would make it safer for them.
All right, thank you, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, it's just the questions I've been given, like why did we do it? I think more people probably walk down past the oil mills to get to that building than you do actually walk on 47th. It just, to me, do buses unload there at all with children?
Yeah, there is at least one, yeah, if not more. I've seen more than one parked there periodically.
Okay, it's just follow-up for questions that were asked of me, and they would like us to do away with that speed zone. So I think perhaps we could have another look at that, and we have a lot of speed zones in Tabor, and that's just an additional one that a lot of people didn't think.
Certainly to make a motion, Councillor Bruin, to put that back on the traffic committee's plate for consideration, and they can bring that information and/or recommendation back to council.
Okay, I will do that. Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that we re-examine the speed zone in front of the Ace Place for the school zone and the justification for it. If we could put that towards the traffic committee to come back to council.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councillor Rudd?
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that Councillor Firth's explanation was quite adequate as to why that is there. I don't think that needs to be reviewed. It's a school zone. Buses unload there, and there's a lot of foot traffic. From those kids that they come at different times of day as well. They're not all 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. There's a lot of traffic around there through the day. Foot traffic, I mean, from the kids. So just, I mean, go ahead and review it. I'd support that, I guess, but I think that's justified, and the traffic committee did a good job.
Yeah, that's definitely where it's at right now in the review stage with that motion, so thank you for that information. All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. Any other standing item requests? None whatsoever. I think we're good with anything else there, Mr. Thibault? What we've covered that's currently on paper at the moment?
Yep, we're feeling covered.
All right. With that, one further item, item 7.7. That is the municipal election 2021 campaign contribution disclosure requirement. Mr. Thibault.
Administration will ask Carrie to speak on this one, please.
Thank you, Ms. Van Ham.
Good afternoon again, Council. As was transmitted to you earlier, and it's a requirement of the Local Authority Election Act within certain timeframes, there are requirements for all candidates to submit campaign contribution disclosures. If there was one or multiple that were not received, a report is required to be transmitted to Council, and the results of that report are required to be made public. So because we have never had this before, we also talked to Municipal Excellence just to make sure that we were on the right path, and we are. So it was transmitted to Council earlier, the location of the disclosures are also located on the town's website. So we can see the disclosures that you have filed as well as the ones that haven't been filed. So we're just looking for a motion to accept it into the records at this point in time, so it'll be captured in the minutes that we fulfilled our legislative requirement in accordance with the Local Authority Election Act.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Bruin?
No questions, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion on this.
All right.
The council accepts the report of late filing from administration for a campaign contribution disclosure, which was not received within the legislative timeframe by the local jurisdiction in accordance with section 147 or 147.7, 2 and 147.81 of the Local Authorities Election Act associated to the 2021 municipal election, and council acknowledges the listing of the campaign contribution disclosures located on the town's website, which are required to be made public.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beck, you had a question also? All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. With that, we're on to delegates for 5 p.m. So could I have a motion to adjourn and reconvene at 5 p.m. for our delegations? Councillor Beckering?
Also move, Mr. Mayor.
Motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. And back to our delegations, item 8.1, Green Shirt Day information. Mr. Tebow.
Mr. Tebow is here.
Yes.
We've got a stand-in, so Jan Clemis has had a mishap, and Bonnie Turcato, if I pronounce that correctly, has come to present on Jan's behalf. So,
All right, thank you. Bonnie, welcome. You just, there you go. Yep, right in the middle, yep.
Got the face? Good.
That's the one.
Alrighty. Thank you for allowing this short presentation on Green Shirt Day and organ tissue donation awareness. Many families in the Tabor and surrounding area have been affected by organ donation. So, Logan's legacy. The link at the bottom of the slide goes to the Alberta registration page. And we'd just like to remind everyone that the next of kin is the one who makes the final decisions on whether someone becomes an organ donor or not. So please talk to your families about your wishes. So this slide here are two of our local families who are angel donors who have passed on. On the left here, we have Curtis Vandergast, who became an angel donor when he passed away at age 36 in 2018. And you can see him here with his wife, Amy, and his daughter, Georgia, and some extended family in the bottom. And then his cousin, Megan, on the right, who I taught in Vauxhall a few years ago. She was sadly in a car accident and sustained a brain injury. And in 2016, at the age of 18, she passed away, but her parents, Martin and Benita, donated her organs, and she's pictured here with her little sister, Amy, and little brother, Blake. We have some local transplant recipients as well, who have passed on but are not forgotten. On the left here, Karen DeVlieger Hamilton with her husband Brett and her two twin daughters Lily and Emma. And Joe Magus received a kidney transplant from his daughter Joanne here in 2003 as well. More loved ones that are no longer with us, but their lessons and memories remain. On the right, Paul Giroux. He received a heart transplant in 1987 and a kidney transplant, kidney donation from his daughter Kathy in 2002, and was supported by Steph Giroux. And then on the left, Kelly Clemis, my dad, received a double lung transplant in July 2014. He had 3 extra years with us to attend more of our weddings and get to meet a few of his grandchildren. We honor our living donors and note the gratitude of their recipients. So here pictured in the middle again, Paul and, Joanne and her dad, Joe. On the left, Andy and Jack. And on the right, my mom, Jan, who received a kidney transplant from my brother Blair. And receiving the gift of life is an accurate way to describe how we feel. So here on the right-hand side, Aiden Marty received a kidney transplant from her mom, Shauna. She's a local teacher here at Dr. Hammond. And on the left, a picture of Jen Engel just after the arrival of her 2 twin daughters. She received a double lung transplant in 2008. And last slide here. Just a thank you again, and that we're all so grateful for the extra years that the gift of life has given to
individuals and their families, and the peace that resulted from sharing the gift of life with others. And if you haven't yet registered your decision to become an organ donor, then please register, please tell your family, and be inspired.
All right. Thank you so much for your presentation. Any questions for Bonnie whatsoever? Councilor Bruin?
Well, I have to say something about this because, Bonnie, thank you for the great presentation, and I hope everything's good with your lovely mother, Jan. She's one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
And she's such a strong promoter and for the donors, the organ transplants and that. I'd like to point out those two good-looking fellows in the picture with the cob of corn.
Mm-hmm.
If you read that, there are T-shirts there. Andy says, "I'm the liver," or mine says, "I'm the liver, he's the giver," with an arrow pointing to him, and his says, "I'm the giver, he's the liver." And it was really kind of a neat T-shirts we had. And the fellows that have passed, they're all great people. I knew them well. And it's sad to see them gone, but the impact they made on other people's lives in this community was huge. So I have obviously a very strong supporter of the organ transplant program, and if it wasn't for my good friend and great person, Andy, I wouldn't be here today. And I appreciate every moment I have because of Andy. So of course, I'm a very strong proponent of the organ transplant, living or angel donors. It's a fantastic thing, and I strongly support everything we can do as a town to support it as well. And I'll leave that for other discussion for other members.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Bruin. Councilor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Bonnie. You mentioned that the final decision regarding donation of an organ is made by the next of kin. Could you explain, though, on the driver's license these days, because mine says a big D on it. How does that work?
So it's my understanding that you can register your wishes with that declaration on your driver's license, but when the time comes, it is your family's choice whether to donate their loved one's organs or to not. So it's not a guarantee when people register. So it's really important to have those decisions with your family members and those who are making those important decisions when it is the end of somebody's life, so that they know your wishes and can honor them.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Soares, do you have any questions you're in?
No, I don't, but I think it's a great initiative, and I really applaud your presentation.
All right. Thank you. Councilor Bruin?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make the motion that council accepts delegation's presentation related to Green Shirt Day for information purposes.
All right. Thank you. Councilor Firth, do you have a question? All right. All right. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried now. Councilor Bruin?
Sorry, I missed that. I'm obviously in favor. But I think what Bonnie and Councilor Beckering said about your living relatives when something happens, it's so important that they know your wishes. When we were getting people to sign the organ cards, you have to ensure your family knows that you want to be a donor. Because at that moment, that's when the decision is made. No matter what your personal wishes were, it's your next of kin that will decide. So it's very important that your family knows your wishes. And what a great gift you can give to someone, the gift of life.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Bruin. Thank you once again, Bonnie, for your presentation.
Thank you very much for having me. I'll leave these green bags. It's just a thank you from my mom to everybody, and one for Carrie Vanham as well. And I have a thank you card for you, Mayor Prokop.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, on to our next delegation, item 8.2, the Meadows Manufactured Housing Community. Mr. Thibault.
So it looks like Mr. Douglas Bergen is here, and he's going to come run through his slideshow for us. So Douglas, make sure you turn the microphone on so that Councillor Sorensen can hear. And I can drive the slideshow, or, yep, that'll work, good.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bergen. Welcome.
Your worship, members of council, how do you follow that?
Good question.
You really needed to put her last. Wow. That's moving for sure. It's fantastic. All right. Well, my name is Douglas Bergen, and I am familiar to some of you, but not all of you. And so I appreciate your worship, members of council, for the opportunity today to bring you an update on the Meadows, our very exciting manufactured housing community here in Tabor. So I will be going over much of my presentation from last time for those of you that are new here, and it will be enlightening for those of you that are new, and a bit of a recap for those of you that are new to this council. In May of 2019, Gary Shear and Phyllis Monks came out to Coaldale and set up a meeting with me to visit the station grounds and the Meadows, the Seasons, the two manufactured home communities that I have out there, with the preface that they were looking to do some affordable housing initiative here in Tabor. And so after a long conversation, we decided that the solution would be to perhaps introduce manufactured housing to your community. So maybe if you want to go to the next slide here, sir. There you go. So there was the goal was to do something sustainable here in town. The solution was to be modeling something after the two communities that I had created in Coaldale. And the result, of course, is the Meadows that we're now substantially complete phase one as of October of last year. We do have some final touches to do, but all the infrastructure's in the ground and the lots are ready for occupancy in the development now. So a little bit about me, the developer. I'm formally trained as an architectural technologist. 1985, I graduated SAIT with a diploma in architectural technology, but I have a love for land development. And so we incorporated our company in 1989. We're located in the Lethbridge County. We opened Station Grounds, which is a community of 177 lots in Coaldale, with a full build-out of 200 in 2000. And then in 2010, we opened the Seasons, which is a condominium development similar to the Meadows here in town, which is a full build-out of 296 lots. And we just created another 50 lots last summer, so we actually have 142 there right now. I've done a number of other land development projects. The first four are in Crow's Nest Pass, so Aspen Creek, McLaren Ridge, Kananaskis Wilds, and Sawback Ridge. Two of the others are in Coaldale, Fieldstone Meadows, which is a stick-built community, Solera Properties, which is an entry-level residential development for rent, and then 102 Scenic Drive, so it's a large condominium project that we're currently working on in Lethbridge now. Next slide, you wonder why manufactured housing? Certainly I asked the same thing when I first got into this business 22 years ago, but I found that the industry actually does a very poor job of promoting manufactured housing because of its low carbon footprint. So you can appreciate that in stick-built housing, you've got a concrete truck idling on the road, you've got numerous trips for contractors back and forth to the site, you've got tieback blowing in the wind, you've got adhesive issues in cold and wet weather, which you don't have any of that in a factory-built home. And so they really are very well built to a high standard. You do support the local community, so Lethbridge has two manufactured housing plants, being Triple M and SRI. And it's fairly economical. So prior to COVID hitting, the supply chain has definitely changed things a little bit with the cost of a home, but the average 1,520 square foot home on a lot, you could live in a brand new house for less than $250,000. So certainly it's a very economical product, and it offers a higher standard of living than most entry-level housing. So if you can imagine yourself renting an apartment for a mortgage payment not much different than what you'd be paying at 2.25% on $250,000, you get a large lot, you can have privacy, you can grow a garden, you have opportunity to build a garage. So there's huge benefits to the independence that you have and the standard of living you have with manufactured housing. Not to mention that it is a good steward. We're good stewards of our raw land because you can get the highest yield per single family dwelling in creating mobile home lots. Then an overview of our subdivision. So there is the entire 60 acres fully built out, which will be 302 lots. Our first phase, of course, is 95 lots, which is just either side of 72nd Avenue. Some things that we did for efficiencies, you can see that there's a swath, a diagonal swath through the development, which is the TID line. So we were able to keep that in place. The previous area structure plan produced by your engineers, MPE, moved that right-of-way to around the perimeter of the site, which of course would have been far more convenient, but at the cost of $400,000, it would have added to the cost of our lots. And so maintaining that and also employing many of the tricks that we've learned over the last 20 years, we're able to deliver you 300 lots on 60 acres with a starting price of $68,900. So our price list, which of course is microscopic, you can't see it, but you'll see that most of the lots are between $68,000 and $70,000. There are a few along the park and the larger lots that go up to $77,900, but for the most part, you can get into a 45 by 100-foot lot at $68,900, of course, plus the home and setup, which is unheard of anywhere in the marketplace for a lot that economical. So we had to phase the development, of course. So our first phase is the 95, and it's shown there in green. And so your first phase is always your biggest phase and your most expensive phase because you have to put in all the infrastructure, being road access to 50th, the full storm pond, the park area, the whole irrigation setup. Of course, we had to access sewer through the farmer's field to the north of the development, water coming in through the west from the south. And so it was a lot of off-site work that had to be done in order to get that first phase started, but now we're through the heavy lifting, and the rest of the phases will be much, much easier to accomplish. Wondering why would you employ a technologist from Coaldale to undertake this development? It's because good business relationships are win-win for both parties. So the town had things to offer, and we had things to offer, and so this joint venture just really, really worked out well. If you look at the contributions that we and the town came to terms on, the town, of course, had an understanding for the need of affordable housing. I did not have that understanding, or I would have built one of these in your town many years ago. So I didn't realize that there was a need for affordable housing in Tabor. Of course, you owned the raw land. You were motivated to serve your community. You had the financial backing. You had very skilled administration. They're very, very good to work with, by the way. Love working with your staff, and a forward-thinking government. So you took the initiative, which no other municipality that I've worked on has, to this extent, to provide this product for the people that need it. Our firm could offer you expertise in planning the developments. We have a proven business model for many, many years, over 20 years of experience in manufactured housing. We had half of the money to contribute, and we have a long-term commitment to this project, and of course to Southern Alberta. We have a lot of relationships in the industry to support us, as well as a seasoned consulting team. So the financial contributions then, the town put up half the money, as did we. You had the raw land, you had municipal support for all of our approvals. And you were there to fund the off-site infrastructure, which largely was oversized because this development only needed a small portion of the infrastructure, but it was oversized to suit your future needs in the industrial park and the neighboring lands. And you were willing to absorb some of the taxes moving forward until we have the lot sold and they pay the taxes. We were on an equal footing with financial investment. Of course, we had engineers, and we installed all of the infrastructure. We tendered it. We hired the necessary contractors. Inspections took place along the way, and we're now to the final steps of landscaping. I have established the condominium association, worked with all the lawyers to get through the documents, legal registration of all the lots, and now, of course, we need to make it work. Moving on then to marketing. Most of our marketing has been online, although we have taken out newspaper ads, but most of it is all online. So we have a company out of Calgary that does this for us. We have placed over 500,000 ads. We have had almost 10,000, well today it would have been over 10,000 clicks on those ads, so those are people that are caught their eye and they click on it. We've spent over $15,000 to advertise on Google and Facebook, and so each one of those clicks costs us $1.57. We have had over 200 leads and 72 phone calls with individuals interested in the product and trying to walk them through what it is and what it looks like And right now, the hurdle is the delivery of mobile homes. So we went from 90 days to 300 days. So that is really becoming a challenge. Gary phoned me the other day or sent me an email. He said, well, why don't we try bringing American homes in? Let's go south of the border. And he gave me the name of a manufacturer down there. So I phoned the manufacturer. He said, well, first of all, Mr. Bergen, he says, your standards are much higher in Canada. So he says, I can't bring a house across the line. And I said, okay, so that shuts that down. But I says, what is your delivery on a home? He said, 18 months. Wow. 30 days to build, 17 months of wait. So I said, so you're not selling anything, are you, sir? And he said, no, we are not. So this supply chain issue has just caused a huge problem for us. We sold 2 lots last year in the seasons in Coaldale, and we sell 10 or 11 a year. So it's definitely challenging for sure. Through those $500,000 ads and all the clicks and all the people that we've talked to, we've found that maybe the young market isn't so much the ones that we're trying to target for our initial home purchases. So we've changed up our campaign a little bit with what we've learned online to perhaps cater more to the empty nesters than the young families. So we're pushing that. We just changed that in the last quarter of last year, and are seeing how that's working now. We have, of course, hired Mr. Just here in town, who is our local representative and marketer, and he's doing a great job, albeit we haven't had a whole lot of traction due to delay in delivery. It's really costing us. So we have streamlined the process. We've done this in Coaldale for many years, but just so that you're aware, people come in, they find us online or drive through the development, they pick a lot. We team them up with a manufacturer sales rep to supply them with the right home for them, and then also pair them with a banker that understands financing mobile homes, and then of course streamline the move-in process, and so that it is relatively seamless for them to occupy their lot. So with that, Your Worship, I put it to you for questions.
All right. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Bergen, and any questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Bergen, for your presentation. I noticed on your last slide here, it says lot and home from 280K. The price has changed somewhat, has it not, Doug?
It has. It really has. Yeah. So we don't want to stretch that. I mean, if you went to a 16 wide, we could lower that number somewhat. But we want to, all the lots in the meadows can accommodate a 20-foot wide home or a 22-foot wide home. There's not many 16s being sold anymore. But the closer we creep to 300,000, the farther we are from, defining this as affordable housing. But hopefully the supply chain clears up and that number goes back down to 250. That's what everybody's hoping for, because no one's enjoying this right now. The people that want to buy one of these are not happy with the wait, so they'll find something else. We did actually have one lot with a deposit on it, and once they notified their landlord that they were moving out but had to wait 300 days for their house, the landlord talked them into buying the house. So we gave them their deposit back. It's very unfortunate, but yeah, what can we do? We did this in good faith with a commitment to serving the community, and I'm not going anywhere. We're going to make this work. We need the supply chain to clear up. We need that number to come down.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Follow
Sure,
up
you bet. Yep.
could you address the stick-built aspect of this, if it's possible or not?
Yes, it sure is. So we had one fellow from the community come forth and ask if we could do stick-built housing on this. I'm reluctant to do stick-built on-site because of the mess that's there for 4 or 5 months. But nonetheless, we ran it up the flagpole, and the municipality was happy to do that. And so myself and your staff worked together to change the bylaw. So the bylaw is now changed to allow micro-houses. I was just visiting with a fellow in my office today that works for a micro home builder in Lethbridge. And so I said, are you aware that the Meadows in Tabor is open for business and that we will accept microhomes? And he said, we're not. So he's going to take that back to his boss and let him know that if they could just give us a prototype, put something else out here. I couldn't even get a show home. So that show home that's out there, I got that out of Red Deer. And I had to become a dealer in order to get it. I'm a mobile home dealer now.
All
I'll
right.
do what it takes.
Thank you. Councillor Rudd.
I was going to ask that same question about stick built, but a follow-up to that, you mentioned these micro homes. What is that? Similar? Is that similar to what's proposed?
That's
mobiles?
exactly right. Microhome's just a small house.
Same thing, only.
Yeah, we don't want them to look like RVs. They've got to fit in architecturally. But if someone wants to live in a small footprint house, and we're slab on grade, so we don't even make them put deep foundations in. If they can, work with Superior to devise a foundation that is acceptable to the municipality and to the safety codes officer, we're all there. Like, I'll do whatever it takes.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Mine is based kind of on the same question, the definition of a micro home. Like, is it so small you gotta step out to take a breath of air, or?
Personally, I've been in this business for over 30 years. I do think that micro homes are a fad, the really small ones. Just picture yourself living in an RV long term. It doesn't work. But a 16 by 76, that's 1,200 square feet. That's not a micro home.
No.
So we're just talking small houses is what we're talking. So micro, we're not going to allow something out there that's, 10 by 30. It would look ridiculous.
Yeah,
but,
that was
small
the concern.
houses is what we're trying
Some
to do.
pictures I've seen of the micro home, the bathroom is part of the kitchen and you sleep above it.
They really are, and I think that is a different product that you don't necessarily want here. So we have to be careful of the terminology. But what Katie has called them is slab on grade houses, and so just basically a small house that doesn't have a deep foundation.
And that may be some of the answer for not being able to get the mobile pre-built homes. If we can allow construction in there.
Absolutely. So I'm game. We need to get the thing off the ground. So if someone wants to build it on site, let's go. The gentleman that was looking to do it, I asked him, did you have a large shop in town? It just wouldn't take a lot to build it in a shop and bring out any overhead door that'll take a semi-truck and bring one of these houses out. But he was reluctant. He really wanted to build them on site. So I said, fine. So hopefully now, things are warming up, and I got to get the dirt off the street. Obviously, it's been a heck of a windy winter. But once we get some seed in the ground and get that all settled down, it'll look very, very presentable. And we're looking forward to a great product.
All right, thank you, Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if supply chain doesn't improve, how are we going to attract business?
There is a threshold for a roof over your house. Stick-built houses have gone through the roof. Every house coming out of my office now is between $300 and $350 a square foot, the custom ones that we design. So a roof over your head is becoming more expensive. There's not much you and I can do about that. Price of wood, but right now it is supply chain, and the federal government is investing a lot of money in Indigenous housing, and so that is really keeping the plants backlogged as well. So there's a lot of Indigenous housing going out of Lethbridge, I know that for sure. So that also is contributing to the backlog. But there's not much we can do. Interest rates are going to creep up a little bit, but that affects, as I say, a roof over your head. So that affects your rent in an apartment building. It affects everything. So if the whole industry moves up, we should just be able to move up with it. The good part about this is that we got our pipes in the ground before. Well, PVC did go up, but not like it's going up now. So the good part is that we've got lots at 68.9. No one has that. So that is our contribution, if you will, to the solution of affordable housing, and the rest of it really is out of our hands. But I mean, I talked to a fellow here in Alberta that he's up by Edmonton. He had a plant that built housing for the oil field, and I said, "Can you retool your plant to do mobile homes?" And he said, "Mr. Bergen, it would take me 9 months to get my plant retooled and all those staff in place." And he says, with what the supply chain's doing, he says it would be a real gamble. So, we really got to work with the plants that are in place now and hope that delivery time comes down over the next 12 months. But the micro home thing is a real opportunity. They can get out there and start building. So I'd really like to pursue that and wait for the manufacturers to come around.
All right, thank you, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Bergen. While I appreciate your enthusiasm and commitment to this project, I'm just curious, at what point would we possibly want to rethink this concept? I know you said 12 months. So is 12 months, is that the time that we're going to hope that these supply chain issues will resolve? And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but my question, is what do you foresee?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't foresee. No one is understanding this market right now. I can tell you that I've been doing this for 22 years, and I've been through good years and I've been through bad years, and I've just stuck it out. There's no one else doing this. No one's building mobile home parks except, well, me basically in southern Alberta. You know, Ratskis used to be there, but that whole group has moved on. So it's not like we have competition. This is still entry-level housing, and that won't change. But I don't, quite frankly, know how to rethink it. It's not like we could change this development into deep service lots. They're not made for that. So I'm not sure. We're pretty committed without spending a lot of money to dig up all those services and create something different. So I think we just need to be creative.
Okay, but the small slab on grade houses, I mean, that is,
That's where I'm pushing now, particularly with my meeting today with that gentleman. I'm going to go and I'll say, look, we will put up a lot. You know, don't pay for it for 6 months. Get a house on there. They're local. They want to do that. It would just be fun. Like, let's just see. We need to have a parade of homes. We need to have people entering these homes and seeing what they're all about, as opposed to, you know, right now it's just a lot of dirt blowing around. So I need to get the grass on the ground and get some houses out there. So that's what I'm pushing for now. So.
thank you.
All right, thank you,
Good
Councillor
question,
Rudd.
though. It's a good question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It was really informative. I'm glad you brought up the topic of getting it cleaned up and putting some grass around there, because we do have issues with other bare land just blowing around, like you say. So would that just be applying to the 95 lots then, or are you anticipating that you take that whole 60 acres and make sure that it's stable and germinated and not going to be a nuisance to anybody else? Thanks.
So the lots to the north of the 95 lots, that's all seeded. That germinated last year. So that's going to grow out, and so we're not going to have any blowing there. And then to the south of the storm pond, we rent that to the farmer. So the farmer is going to keep renting that. We actually cut our storm pond slightly smaller so that that pivot could keep turning. Because really, he keeps the weeds down. For us to somehow plant something there and then mow it, or like after, it's just, you might as well get some benefit from it. So, and you may recall, it was a very interesting negotiation to maintain our services through that field. So we wanted to do all we could to work with the farmer to make sure that he could maintain maximum yield from his acres after we were developed. And you know, the 95 lots at what we sell for in my community, we're in this for 8 to 9 years at 11 lots a year, right? But hopefully they go quicker than that.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Rudd touched on what I was concerned about. I've actually pushed a lot of people that way to have a look at lots, but they come back and say it's a desert. There's too much dirt. So there is a plan to try to get some grass growing everywhere. So
every lot will be seeded. Yeah, we just couldn't get there last year.
No, I understand.
The building season was just too long.
And that so dry. But that is key, I think. Get some green out there. I love the trees you've planted out there. I think it's well thought out, and they're going to give them a couple of years. It's going to be a really nice neighborhood. So getting some grass there is very key.
Yes, thank you. And I put in far more trees than what my landscape plan showed. I'm a tree nut,
No,
so I just love it. It will look really good. But yeah, if we could have, the irrigation's in the ground. We didn't put any water in it because it was just going to freeze. We finished it in November, I think. But no, we have to get all those, and we will seed every single lot, and we irrigate the lots just manually with a hose and a sprinkler, because once they're taken over, the individual will. But all of the parks have underground irrigation.
Okay, that was the question. Like you have the capability of water the right of way and the park area.
That all has irrigation under it.
And the individual lots, that's going to be a manual.
It's a manual thing till they buy them. If they want to put underground irrigation in their lot, they can. But of course, we never know if they're going to build a garage or what they're going to do, so we wouldn't put irrigation on those lots. But yes, we keep them wet. We have to. It has to turn green, and we mow every single lot. We mow it all till someone moves in.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rudd.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, so the houses are going to be 20 feet or 22 feet wide?
That's correct.
And including the micros or anything that goes in there?
Yeah, they wanted to do L-shape. They wanted to do all kinds of creative things, the gentleman here from town that came in. But we told him he pretty much has to stick to the mobile home pad. So the pads are 22 by 76 or 20 by 76. And so he could go shorter than that, but pretty much he has to stay within that footprint, because that's where all the services are. And we don't want we don't want housing that isn't complementary to when the mobile home moves in. So I'm not going to accept 8, 12 pitches with dormers on these little doll houses, and then you move a mobile home in next door, which is basically, you know, a box. So we have to keep the architectural elements complementary one to another.
So is there a minimum square footage then that goes with that size?
I don't believe we put in a minimum square footage, but we've told them that they had to stay within the footprint of that lot. But having said we don't want RVs, we may have to implement that so that we don't get these little ones.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you. Just a question related to your show home out there. It's a manufactured home, of course, and you're looking at doing a slab on grade show home as well. Every lot there is capable of putting a garage on as well, right? Correct. I guess my question is related to the show homes, both styles. Would you be looking at putting on a garage for the show home purpose as well, for either one of those type projects?
We haven't. We've done show homes in station grounds and seasons for 20 years on and off, and we've never put a garage on the house. That house there is on wood blocks right now. It's not on concrete as it should be, because we don't anticipate that the person buying that house would necessarily want that lot. So we anticipate taking the skirting off, rolling it to the house, to the lot that they want, then putting it on a permanent foundation. Do you or don't you want a garage? So, but the micro home will not be our investment. This is our investment. The micro home will not be. And so if they elect to put a garage on it, the micro home will stay where it is, because it's going to be slab on grade. So it's not.
I'm just saying, like, to have the garage shown on a show home is a huge asset, you know, as far as so people can see that visually. And even having something on the website to show that the garage, what it might look like, you know, on a website is important also. But to me, the actual on-site visual appeal is key. And I don't know how that gets any better to sell that cell.
Yes, I think that if we have availability, we could sell homes out there. But like I say, I had to go to Red Deer to get just that show home, and they have no inventory to give me. So you're right, we could invest the money to put a garage beside it, but then actually we wouldn't want to sell it to them. We don't want to sell them the show home, because then we got them to show again. And I've only got one. So what I'm trying to do is create a lineup is what I'm trying to do. So, but I don't deny that seeing a garage would help for sure.
All right, thank you. Councilor Schwartz, do you have any questions you're in?
I do. So first of all, there's a stigma there that manufacturing homes, the value depreciates rather quickly. Could you just explain whether that's true or not?
Yes, and I believe that is a stigma. That isn't necessarily the case. Certainly now, people are getting more for their mobile homes than they paid. So in a previous life, when the homes weren't built to the standard that they are today, I do believe that there was a loss in value for sure. But, and other than becoming a dealer for this project, I don't get involved in how much someone paid for their house and how much they sold it for. But I do know that in station grounds, for the first time ever in the history of station grounds, for a 2-week period, we had no houses for sale, not one out of 177. There's just one that's come up now. So, and those were selling for more than they paid for them.
I do have another question. A lot of comments is that this the dollar value isn't affordable. And I had one gentleman who is a single person look to see if, you know, he could purchase something there, and it wouldn't be affordable to him. So how would you comment on these people that still find it too expensive, and now you're boosting the price up again?
Yeah, okay, so first of all, if I may, we're not boosting the price up. We're just reacting to the demand chain, right? So I'll just use my daughter as an example. She got married 3 years ago, and she came to me and she says, "Daddy," she says, I really don't want to live in a mobile home." And I said, "Mariah, go crazy, girl." So she married a musician, and they went looking for a rental where they're going to rent. Well, he plays guitar and he makes a lot of noise. Well, it's music, but so she couldn't rent a basement suite because they're going to complain upstairs. And so then they were going to main floor. And so at the end of the day, they bought a recent model mobile home, moved it into the Seasons in Coaldale, and their mortgage payment is $762 a month, and they were looking at $1,100 a month rent. So affordable is a relative thing. Of course, there's some people that can't. Could my daughter afford $1,100 rent? Yeah, she could have, but she's paying less now on a lot that she owns in a house that's, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years old, whatever it is. It was used when she bought it. So, so affordable is a relative thing. Some, of course, will never be able to afford it. But if you compare it to rent, so right now we're working on a $28 million affordable housing project in Lethbridge for Indigenous people. And we have to be below market rent for CMHC. A 2-bedroom unit now that Seymour Pacific is building, the guys that come in and build 1,000 units a year across Canada, is renting for $1,595. Well, your mortgage payment on a $250,000 mortgage is not going to be $1,595. Do you know what I'm saying? You can live here cheaper than you can rent in Lethbridge a 2-bedroom home. So a 2-bedroom apartment. So I think, again, it's expensive. It's expensive to live. But is it more expensive than renting? My daughter proved it, and what we're seeing in Lethbridge now, it is not. But any form of housing, unless it's subsidized, will always be out of reach for some, for sure.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? None whatsoever? Mr. Tebow, your end administratively?
Nothing from our end. We will be talking with Mr. Bergen again around the stick build and trying to move something forward. Happy to hear that there's been a conversation already. We did sort of preempt some of this conversation so that he could come with that information. So happy to hear that there's a lead on that.
All right, thank you. Would you need any kind of motion to go further with that kind of discussions or no?
I think we're already in perpetual talks, so I don't think we need anything, unless there was something specific that didn't already exist that you'd like us to address. Otherwise, we will just be continuing.
Does anybody have anything specific and related to a motion that may be necessary to deal with administration and or Mr. Bergen? Councilor Sorensen, you're in.
Well, I was just wondering if we could try and make it more attractable, specifically more affordable. I'm not sure if we need a motion for that or not.
I guess I'll just turn that back over to Mr. Tebow. Thoughts, your end?
I would say we would need a motion of some sort because something's already in place where we have arrived at a number. So, I mean, unless Mr. Bergen has some other idea, there's not a whole lot of other ways to get to a different number unless something in the equation changes.
All right, Mr. Bergen.
Your worship, I mean, the only other thing you could do is subsidize. So right now, with the CMHC funding that we're working on for Indigenous people and providing the level of support that we are, 41% of our loan will be forgiven. So they're subsidizing it for sure, so that these people can get, our lowest rent will be, I believe, 50% of market. So if that 2-bedroom elsewhere rents for $1,600, these folks will be able to come in and rent something for $800. That's truly affordable, but someone has to pay the bill. And, you know, the Aboriginal Housing Society that I'm working for, they're not paying the bill. The city of Lethbridge is not coming forward. They're coming forward with some grant money to see this housing built. But CMHC, the federal government, is biting the bullet and subsidizing it. So if the town wanted to spec a micro house, so they say, okay, well, you know, we got to get this thing going and you want to see a garage on it, then fine. You know, I'd be happy to stick handle that for you and design a house and get it built and get it set there. That may be, and you'll sell it, you get your money back, obviously, but that might be the initiative that you need to promote this, or as the councillor is suggesting, perhaps the town wants to invest in a few as a contribution to the community to see this move forward. That is entirely your prerogative, but certainly we are invested as far as we can go. But I'm at the table. I'll do whatever. I've got a lot of money in this as well, and it's not being returned to me. I thought we'd have 10 sold before Christmas, and then I get the 300 days. So not happy.
Right, Councillor Rudd.
Yeah, Doug, you provided the example. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You provided the example of your daughter's situation. Is there, perhaps to help Councillor Sorensen and myself to understand better, affordability aspect of it, then what would typically be the scenario in the Meadows? They're $280,000. Somebody with 10% down, 28,000. What do those numbers look like? And what can be the minimum that a person could get in, and what would that number look like going forward monthly with all the PIT or what, all costs in?
Right, so I don't have that number offhand. I know what my daughter's paying, and her situation's now 3 years old. So I would be amiss to try and come up with that number for the 280 that we're stating now instead of 250. I'd have to do some homework and get that back to you. So I don't know the exact amount when you go PIT, all those things.
All right, thank you. Councilor Sorensen, did you have some motion in mind for that?
I'll throw this out there. I'll make a motion for administration to work with the developer in making the Meadows more attractable and perhaps more affordable.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councilor Beckman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess that motion wouldn't hurt anything. If administration is not able to make it more attractive or more affordable, or the developer, what happens?
Well, then just we come back and get more information. I just think it's worth looking into.
Great, all right, thank you. Councilor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the whole goal of this at the start was to make it affordable. So having a motion to maybe emphasize that, I think, of course, we're going to try to make them as most affordable as we can. It's not, I don't think the town's place to subsidize housing out there or anything like that. So I don't really think we need your motion. I'd support it, but I believe we're already trying to make it as affordable as we possibly can, because we're not going to sell them unless they are affordable. So my thoughts are we're already covering that.
Thank you. We do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Opposed? All right, carried. Thank you. All right, any other questions arising for Mr. Bergeron or Mr. Thibault? I think we got all the bases covered for the moment. All right, perfect. Mr. Bergeron, thank you again so much for your presentation. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Spring is here, Doug.
Spring is.
Yeah, we're hoping. That's right. All right, next is media inquiries and Tabor Times. Kenyon, nice to see you here in person. All right, absolutely. You're more than welcome anytime. And no questions whatsoever? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. With that, ask for a motion to move into closed session, please. Councilor Bruin?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into closed session.
Motion on the table. All in favor?